Don't take off your jackets if it's cold and wet, rainy outside, because you'll wake up the other day with a crick back. Don't do it. Just don't. Hello and welcome to The Sound Is True. My name is Jakob. I'm your host and you're watching a haQ episode. This is the 100th episode of haQ. So yes, I've actually made 100 of these little buggers that you've been viewing. Thank you so much for staying with me for all this time. And for all of you who might be new, hello there. And very nice that you can join us. Argon Synth, many look past this really incredible app because it was made for the iPhone. But I'm using it on my iPad mini. Now if you look down here you can actually see that this is an original iPhone app, because if you press this it turns into iPhone mode, and if you can get past all of this scrolling then you're set. And it's also made by Satoshi, who is the developer behind iSgear, who also made Laplace and Lawrence. Now if you're wondering why I have this peculiar way of looking into the camera, it's because I've got a cricked back. Don't take off your jackets if it's cold and wet, rainy outside, windy, when you're working, because you're getting sweaty and you decide to take off your jacket because you'll wake up the other day with a crick back. Don't do it. Just don't. I'll just give you a quick overview what Argon is. The first page contains all of the presets. The next page is a loop recorder. The next page is the first oscillator. Then you have the second oscillator, the third oscillator, together with the modulation section. So you have an envelope and an LFO that you can use with these three oscillators. And they're already tied into the oscillators. If you look at the level here on the oscillator 3, you have the LFO setting here and the envelope here. The next page is the filter setting, and it's got its own envelope and LFO. The next page is the amp, and it's also got its own LFO and envelope. Page after that is the delay. Page after that is the step sequencer. So you can see it's got loads of functions. The modulation sections are already tied into the oscillators, filters, and amplifier. So let's start by making an initialized patch. Just like that. And then let's go to the first oscillator. So let me play that for you. It's a basic saw waveform loaded, and you change the waveforms up here. Now the F option, which I think stands for formant, correct me if I'm wrong, Satoshi. I actually think this is some kind of waveform with a formant kind of filtering already on there. Pretty brilliant. So let's listen to what happens when I start shaping the formant oscillator. Let's play it an octave down. I can either scroll the keyboard right here, or I can just turn it down an octave. Now let's say I wanted this shape knob to jump up like that. As you can see, you have an LFO knob and an envelope knob right there. So let's go to the envelope section. It's in the oscillator 3 and modulation section right here. So here is where you set the LFO and envelope to be used with the oscillators. And I want to use the envelope. So before we do that, I'm just going to go back to oscillator 1 and turn up the envelope. That's pretty cool, isn't it? We already have something vocal going on there. And let's say I want to make a longer sound. That's very easy. So we're gonna fiddle with the LFO. Let's turn up the LFO a bit, or turn it down so it goes the other way around, and go to the LFO section right there. You can also sync the LFO to tempo. You get really cool results when you use the sample and hold waveform. we're almost getting that monkish kind of vocally sounding thing. If we just made this a bit wet, let's go and scroll down to the delay here. Now turn up the delay. And as you can see here, we have a time range, so you can actually set this to get some really short delays or some really long ones, or set it to tempo. Up the time a bit here, turn up the feedback. Now the color here is just like a cutoff filter for the delay tail, so it filters off some of the higher frequencies over time. I also want the delay signals to bleed into each channel from one another. I also want some modulation being done on the delay tail, and the modulation actually pitches the delay tail up and down. And you have a depth setting, a speed setting, and a stereo spread. Now the signal is getting quite low, so let's go to the amp section and turn on some gain on the drive here. Now to make this sound more drony, I usually put in a bass note. A bass note. So let's go back to oscillator 2 and turn up the volume for this one. And then change the waveform to a sine wave, and then down an octave. Now the next thing we can do to make this patch even greater is to simulate some overtone or throat singing. We go to the filter section and up the resonance a bit. That's a very cool patch, isn't it? Now, Argon synth is really cheap, so you should really go have a look at it. I'm gonna be keeping on making more vocal synthesis videos with different synthesizers. Magellan is actually one of those synthesizers that has a crazy good formant filter, and you can make awesome stuff with it. It's insane. Thanks so much for watching. As usual, Doug Woods, Colin Sweeney, and me, Jakob at thesoundtestroom.com wishes you a very productive week. Now go finger your surfaces and have lots of fun doing it. And don't take off your jackets when you're outside. It's wet, cold, and windy, and you're getting sweaty and feeling like, oh, I should take off my jacket, because that's a bad idea. Ugh. Oh, come on. Just